The text message that destroyed my marriage arrived at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, glowing like a neon sign in the darkness of our bedroom. I wasn't supposed to see it. Lauren's phone had buzzed on my nightstand. She'd plugged it in on the wrong side again, something that had annoyed me for months but now felt like divine intervention. Can't wait to see you Thursday. The Lakehouse will be perfect. Love you. T. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas. 10 years of marriage, and my wife was getting love messages from someone whose name started with T. Not me. My name is Ethan Ward, and apparently I wasn't even a priority anymore. The rain hammered against our bedroom window in that relentless Seattle way, each drop like a tiny fist pounding out the rhythm of my stupidity. How long had I been the fool in this equation? How many family business trips had actually been romantic getaways? Lauren stirred beside me, her blonde hair spread across the pillow like spun gold. Even in sleep, she looked like she belonged in a magazine. Perfect skin, perfect features, perfect lies. She mumbled something about Barrett, her brother, and rolled over. Always Barrett, always family business, always everything except me. I set her phone back exactly where I'd found it and lay there in the darkness, listening to the rain and the sound of my world cracking apart. The smart thing would have been to confront her right then, to wake her up and demand answers. But I'd learned something important in my 38 years. Smart guys don't make good moves when they're angry. They make good moves when they're ready. By morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to be the victim in this story. Lauren woke up at 7 sharp, like she always did, and went through her morning routine with the precision of a Swiss watch. Shower, makeup, hair, the works. She was an events director at the Grandview Hotel downtown, and she never left the house looking less than perfect. "Coffee's ready," I called from the kitchen, keeping my voice steady. She appeared in the doorway wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Everything about Lauren screamed money. Old family money that she never let me forget came from her side, not mine. "Thanks, honey." She kissed my cheek, a quick peck that felt like a business transaction. "I'll be late tonight. We're planning the Morrison wedding, and you know how demanding those clients can be." I nodded, sipping my coffee. "Sure, family business, right?" She paused, her cup halfway to her lips. "What do you mean?" "Nothing, just that your family seems to keep you pretty busy these days." Lauren's laugh was like wind chimes in a hurricane. Beautiful, but completely out of place. "Oh, Ethan, you know how Barrett gets about the hotel connections. He's always networking." Barrett. Her older brother, the golden child who'd never worked a real job in his life, but somehow owned half the real estate in Bellevue. Barrett, who treated me like I was the help at family gatherings. Barrett, who always had an opinion about what Lauren should do with her life, her career, her marriage. "Right," I said. "Barrett." After she left, I sat in our kitchen. Her kitchen, really, since her family had bought the house, and made a list. Not a grocery list or a honey-do list, but a survival list. If I was going to play this game, I needed to know the rules. First rule, know your enemy. Lauren wasn't just cheating on me, she was part of a family that had been playing power games since before I met her. The Hendersons didn't just have money, they had influence, connections, and a complete lack of respect for anyone who wasn't family. Second rule, control what you can control. I couldn't stop Lauren from cheating, but I could damn sure protect myself from the fallout. Third rule, never let them see you coming. I called in sick to work, something I'd done maybe 3 times in 15 years at Boeing, and spent the day doing reconnaissance. I started with our finances, logging into every account, printing every statement. What I found made my stomach turn. Over the past 6 months, Lauren had been moving money. Not huge amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts, but steady transfers to an account I'd never seen before. Our joint savings, which should have had $43,000, was down to $18,000. When I traced the transfers, they all went to something called Henderson Family Ventures, LLC. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Even stealing from me was a family business. My phone buzzed with a text from Nina, my coworker, and probably the only person at Boeing who could make me laugh on a bad day. "You better be dying, Ward. Jenkins is asking questions about the Morrison project." I texted back, "Food poisoning. Back tomorrow." "From Lauren's cooking? That's not food poisoning. That's attempted murder. Feel better." Nina had never liked Lauren, something she'd made clear from the beginning. "She looks at you like you're a participation trophy," she'd said once after a company barbecue. I'd defended Lauren then, told Nina she was wrong. Now I wondered if Nina had been the only one telling me the truth. The rest of the day, I played detective. I drove by the Lakehouse Lauren's family owned up in Snoqualmie, a 2-hour drive that gave me plenty of time to think. The place was empty, but I could see tire tracks in the gravel driveway. Fresh ones. On the way back, I stopped at an electronics store and bought something I never thought I'd need, a voice recorder. Tiny thing, no bigger than a thumb drive, but it could capture hours of conversation. I felt like a character in one of those spy movies Lauren liked to watch, except this was my life falling apart in real time. That evening, Lauren came home with a story about difficult clients and demanding vendors. She was animated, excited even, talking about centerpieces and color schemes with more enthusiasm than she'd shown about anything involving me in months. "Sounds like quite a day," I said, watching her face for tells. "Oh, you know how it is. The Morrison wedding is going to be huge. Barrett thinks we might get 3 more bookings from their guest list alone." There it was again. Barrett. Always Barrett. "Speaking of Barrett," I said carefully, "how's the family business going?" Lauren froze, just for a second, but I caught it. "What family business?" "The LLC, Henderson Family Ventures." Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, guilt, anger, then back to her practiced smile. "Oh, that. It's just some investment thing Barrett set up. Nothing major." "With our money?" "Ethan, it's complicated. Barrett explained it all to me, but you know how financial stuff goes over my head." That was rich. Lauren had a business degree from University of Washington and could calculate compound interest in her head, but suddenly she was playing dumb about where our savings had gone. "Maybe Barrett could explain it to me too," I suggested. "I don't think that's necessary. It's family business, honey. You know how Barrett feels about outsiders getting involved." Outsiders. After 10 years of marriage, I was still an outsider. That night, after Lauren fell asleep, I went through her phone. I know it was wrong, but at that point, wrong felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Dozens of messages from T, who I now knew was Trent Morrison, Barrett's business partner and Lauren's cousin by marriage. The messages went back months, starting innocent enough, but quickly escalating into something that made my skin crawl. "Barrett's out of town next week. Perfect timing. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. You're incredible. Tell Ethan you're working late again. I need you." The worst part wasn't the messages themselves. It was how Lauren responded. She wasn't some innocent victim being seduced. She was an active participant, making plans, suggesting times and places, complaining about me. "Ethan's so boring lately. All he does is work and watch TV. He has no ambition. No wonder your family thinks he's extra weight." Sometimes I think I married the wrong man. I set the phone down and walked to the bathroom, where I stared at myself in the mirror. Boring. No ambition, extra weight, the wrong man. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was all those things. But I was also something they hadn't counted on. I was done being their fool. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had changed. I sat through meetings about wing specifications and titanium stress tests, nodded at the right moments, and contributed to discussions about production schedules. But my mind was elsewhere, planning moves in a game I was just learning how to play. Nina found me at lunch, sliding into the seat across from me in the cafeteria with her usual grace, which is to say, like a controlled explosion. "You look like hell," she announced, unwrapping a sandwich that smelled like heaven. "And not the food poisoning kind of hell. The wife kind of hell. That obvious? Ethan, I've known you for 8 years. You get the same expression when you're solving complex engineering problems and when Lauren's being Lauren. What did she do now?" I almost told her everything right then. Nina was the kind of person who'd probably help me hide a body, no questions asked. But this was my fight, and I needed to handle it my way. "Just the usual family drama," I said instead. Nina snorted. "The Hendersons? Those people treat you like you're lucky to breathe their air. I never understood what you saw in that whole dynamic." "What do you mean?" "Come on, Ethan. You're brilliant. You solve problems that make other engineers cry. You're funny, you're loyal, and you're decent. But around Lauren's family, you turn into this apologetic version of yourself, like you're grateful they let you exist in their orbit." She was right, and it stung because I'd never seen it so clearly before. The Hendersons had a way of making everyone feel like they were doing you a favor just by acknowledging your presence. Lauren's mother, Janelle, spoke to me like I was a waiter who'd gotten her order wrong. Barrett treated me like comic relief. And Lauren treated me like I was temporary. "Maybe it's time to stop apologizing for existing," I said. Nina raised an eyebrow. "Now that sounds more like the Ethan I know. What are you planning?" "Nothing dramatic. Just Adjustments. That afternoon, I made my first real move. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, one where the Hendersons had no connections or influence. I transferred my entire paycheck there, along with half of what remained in our joint account. Legally, it was my money too, but I documented everything just in case. Then I did something that felt both petty and necessary. I canceled Lauren's credit cards. Not the joint ones. Those would trigger immediate attention, but the supplementary cards on my personal accounts that I'd given her years ago for emergencies. Apparently, romantic getaways with Trent qualified as emergencies in Lauren's world. My phone rang as I was driving home. Lauren's name flashed on the screen, and I could practically feel the fury radiating through the device. "Ethan, what the hell is going on? My card was declined at Nordstrom." "Which card?" "The Visa, the one I always use for personal shopping." "Oh, that one. I canceled it." Silence. Then, "You canceled it? Why would you do that?" "Budget adjustments," I said calmly. "We need to be more careful with our spending." "Budget adjustments? Ethan, I was buying a dress for the Morrison wedding. This is for work." "The Morrison wedding?" "Right. The one that was apparently funding her affair with Trent Morrison himself. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife." "I'm sure you can find something in your closet," I said. "You have plenty of dresses." "That's not the point. You can't just make financial decisions without consulting me. We're married, Ethan. We make decisions together." "Together? Like when she decided to move our money to Barrett's LLC without telling me? Like when she decided to start screwing her cousin-in-law behind my back?" "You're absolutely right," I said. "From now on, we'll discuss all financial decisions together. Speaking of which, I'd like to discuss Henderson Family Ventures." Another silence, longer this time. "We'll talk about this when you get home." She hung up before I could respond, which was fine by me. I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. I needed more ammunition first. That evening, Lauren was waiting for me with the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. She'd changed into the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one that used to make me forget my own name. Now it just looked like a costume. "Hi, honey," she said, kissing me like we were performing for an audience. "I made your favorite, chicken parmesan." The smell was incredible, I had to admit. Lauren might be a cheating liar, but she could cook when she wanted to. The question was, what did she want? "Smells great," I said, hanging up my jacket. "What's the occasion?" "Can't a wife make dinner for her husband without having an ulterior motive?" "Sure, but you usually don't." Her smile flickered, just for a moment. "I thought we could talk. About today. About us." We sat down to dinner, and Lauren launched into what I recognized as a carefully rehearsed speech about communication and trust, and working together as a team. It was a good speech, delivered with the kind of sincerity that had probably taken her years to perfect. If I hadn't known what I knew, I might have even believed it. "The thing is, Ethan, I feel like we've been growing apart lately. You seem distant, distracted. Are you happy?" There it was, the setup. She was going to make this my fault, my failure, my inadequacy. The boring husband who drove his poor wife into another man's arms. "Are you?" I asked instead. "What do you mean?" "Are you happy, Lauren? In this marriage, I mean." She blinked, clearly not expecting the question to be turned around on her. "Of course I'm happy. Why would you ask that?" "Just wondering. You seem to spend a lot of time with your family lately. Barrett, especially, and Trent." I watched her face carefully when I said Trent's name. She didn't flinch, but her hand tightened slightly on her wine glass. "They're family, Ethan. Family is important." "More important than your husband?" "That's not fair. You knew when you married me that family was a priority." Priority. There was that word again. I was starting to hate it. "Right," I said. "Priority. Where exactly do I rank on that list?" Lauren set down her fork and looked at me with the kind of patience usually reserved for small children and the mentally impaired. "Ethan, you're being ridiculous. Of course you're a priority. You're my husband." "But not the top priority. It's not a competition, isn't it?" We stared at each other across the table, and for a moment, I saw something in her eyes that might have been fear. Or maybe it was just annoyance. With Lauren, it was getting harder to tell the difference. "I don't understand what's gotten into you lately," she said finally. "You're acting paranoid, suspicious. It's not attractive." Attractive, because that's what mattered. Not truth, not honesty, not fidelity. Attractiveness. "Maybe I'm just paying attention for the first time in years," I said. "Paying attention to what?" I could have ended it right there. Could have laid out the evidence, confronted her with the messages, demanded explanations. But something held me back. Maybe it was the way she was looking at me, like I was a problem to be managed rather than a husband to be respected. Maybe it was the realization that she was already planning her defense, already crafting the narrative that would make me the villain in this story. Or maybe I was just finally learning how to play the game. Nothing specific, I said. Just things. Lauren relaxed slightly, probably thinking she'd dodged a bullet. Well, I hope you'll talk to me if something's really bothering you. Communication is so important in a marriage. Absolutely, I agreed. Communication is everything. After dinner, Lauren said she had to make some calls about the Morrison wedding. She took her phone and went upstairs, closing the bedroom door behind her. I could hear her voice through the walls, soft and intimate in a way it hadn't been with me in months. I spent the evening in my home office researching divorce laws in Washington state, community property, asset division, spousal support. It was like learning a new language, and not a particularly pleasant one. But knowledge was power, and I was tired of being powerless. Around 10 o'clock, Lauren came downstairs wearing the silk pajamas I'd bought her for Christmas. She looked beautiful and guilty and completely unaware that I knew exactly what she was. "Coming to bed?" she asked. "In a minute, just finishing up some work." She kissed the top of my head, and I smelled her perfume, the expensive stuff she only wore for special occasions, or special people. "Don't stay up too late," she whispered. "I might have a surprise for you." After she went upstairs, I sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about surprises. Lauren was right about one thing. I had been distant lately, distracted, but not for the reasons she thought. I was distant because I was finally seeing clearly. I was distracted because I was planning. And if Lauren wanted to play games with surprises, well, I had a few surprises of my own in mind. The rain started again around midnight, tapping against the windows like it was trying to tell me something. I listened to it for a while, then went upstairs to find Lauren already asleep, her phone charging on the nightstand. On my side this time. Saturday morning brought the monthly Henderson family breakfast, a tradition that had been inflicted upon me for the past 10 years. Lauren's mother, Janelle, hosted these gatherings at her Bellevue mansion, and attendance wasn't optional. It was a command performance. "Make sure you wear the blue shirt," Lauren said, applying lipstick with surgical precision. "The one my mother bought you for Christmas." The shirt in question was hanging in our closet with the tags still on it. Janelle had a habit of buying me clothes that were slightly too formal and completely not my style, like she was trying to dress me for a job interview I was perpetually failing. "I was thinking about the gray one instead," I said. Lauren paused, lipstick halfway to her mouth. "The gray one?" "Yeah, the one I actually like." "Ethan, please. It's just a shirt. Wear the blue one. For me?" There it was. The tone that suggested I was being unreasonable about something trivial when we both knew it wasn't about the shirt at all. It was about control, about conformity, about playing my assigned role in the Henderson family theater. "Sure," I said. "For you." But I wore the gray shirt anyway. The Henderson mansion squatted on 2 acres of manicured lawn like a monument to old money and older attitudes. Janelle had inherited it from her parents, along with the superiority complex and the belief that everyone else was just temporarily embarrassed millionaires waiting for her approval. Barrett's BMW was already in the driveway when we arrived, along with a car I didn't recognize, a flashy red Corvette that screamed midlife crisis. "Whose car?" I asked as we walked to the front door. "Probably Trent's," Lauren said casually. "He's been thinking about upgrading." Trent. Of course. I'd been wondering when I'd get to meet Lauren's lover face to face. Janelle answered the door wearing the kind of outfit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, a cream-colored ensemble that probably required special cleaning and careful handling. She kissed Lauren on both cheeks like they were European royalty, then turned to me with the smile she reserved for service providers and unwanted relatives. "Ethan," she said, managing to make my name sound like a minor disappointment. "How nice to see you." "Always a pleasure, Janelle." The dining room was set for 6, which meant Barrett had brought his wife, Susan. I actually liked Susan. She was one of the few people in Lauren's orbit who treated me like a human being instead of a curiosity. Barrett was holding court at the head of the table, gesturing with a mimosa while he explained something about market trends and investment opportunities. He was wearing a suit to breakfast because apparently casual dining was for peasants. "Ethan," he boomed when he saw me. "There's the working man. How's life in the trenches?" "Can't complain," I said, taking my usual seat at the far end of the table. "That's the spirit. Someone has to keep the economy running while the rest of us make the real money, right?" Barrett thought this was hilarious. He laughed at his own joke while the rest of the table offered polite chuckles. except for Susan, who rolled her eyes in a way that suggested she'd heard this routine before. "Barrett," she said, "maybe we could talk about something other than money for once." "Everything is about money, sweetheart. That's the first rule of business." "What's the second rule?" I asked. Barrett looked at me like I'd asked him to explain quantum physics to a goldfish. "What?" "The second rule of business. You said money was the first rule. What's the second?" "Well, Barrett floundered for a moment, clearly not expecting to be challenged. "The second rule is leverage, using other people's resources to maximize your own returns." "Interesting. Using other people's resources. Like my wife, maybe?" That's when Trent Morrison walked into the dining room, and I got my first good look at the man who'd been screwing my wife. He was younger than me, maybe 35, with a kind of artificially perfect smile that suggested expensive dental work. His hair was styled with enough product to survive a hurricane, and he moved with the practiced confidence of someone who'd never been told no about anything important. "Sorry I'm late," he said, kissing Janelle's hand like he was auditioning for a period drama. Traffic was murder. "Trent, darling," Janelle cooed. "We were just getting started." Trent worked his way around the table, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries with the easy charm of a professional politician. When he got to Lauren, he kissed her cheek, letting his hand linger on her shoulder just a moment too long. "Lauren," he said, his voice dropping to an intimate register, "you look incredible." "Thank you," she replied, and I caught the slight flush in her cheeks. Then Trent turned to me, extending his hand with that $1,000,000 smile. "You must be Ethan. I'm Trent Morrison. I've heard so much about you." I shook his hand, squeezing just a little harder than necessary. "All good things, I hope?" "Of course. Lauren's always talking about her hard-working husband." Hard-working. The way he said it made it sound like a character flaw. Breakfast was a masterclass in passive aggression and social maneuvering. Janelle dominated the conversation with stories about her charity work and social commitments, making sure everyone understood how important and busy she was. Barrett pontificated about real estate markets and investment strategies, occasionally throwing in subtle digs about people who were content with steady paychecks instead of real wealth. Trent played the role of charming outsider, asking thoughtful questions and offering carefully calibrated compliments. But I noticed how often his eyes drifted to Lauren, and how she seemed to light up whenever he spoke. Susan tried to steer the conversation toward normal topics, movies, books, current events, but was consistently overruled by the others. She caught my eye a few times and gave me looks that suggested she was as uncomfortable with the whole performance as I was. "So, Ethan," Trent said during a lull in the conversation, "Lauren tells me you work at Boeing. That must be fascinating." "It has its moments." I've always been curious about the aerospace industry, all that precision, all those regulations. It must be challenging to innovate in such a rigid environment. There was something in his tone that rubbed me the wrong way, like he was suggesting that my job was somehow limiting or small-minded. "We manage," I said. "Someone has to build the planes that keep the economy moving, right?" Trent laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Of course, though I imagine it gets repetitive after a while. The same processes, the same problems, the same solutions. Not really. Every project is different. Every challenge requires creative problem-solving." "I'm sure it does. I just meant that some people thrive on routine while others need more variety in their lives." The way he said variety made my skin crawl. I could feel Lauren watching me, probably wondering if I was going to cause a scene. "Variety is overrated," I said. "I prefer depth, really understanding something, mastering it, building on it over time. Some people mistake novelty for growth." Trent's smile flickered, just for a second. "That's an interesting perspective. I find that people who are always chasing the next new thing are usually running from something, or someone." The table went quiet. Barrett cleared his throat and launched into a story about a difficult client, but I could see Trent's jaw tighten. "Good. Let him think about that." After breakfast, the men traditionally retired to Barrett's study for cigars and brandy, like we were living in a 1950s movie. I usually found excuses to skip this part, but today I was curious to see how the family dynamics played out when the women weren't around. Barrett's study was a shrine to masculine insecurity. Leather-bound books that had never been opened, hunting trophies from guided safaris, and a wet bar that looked like it belonged in a gentleman's club. He poured 3 glasses of brandy that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "To family," Barrett said, raising his glass. To family," Trent echoed. I drank without toasting. The brandy was smooth and expensive and tasted like other people's money. "So, Ethan," Barrett said, settling into his leather chair like a king on his throne, "Lauren mentioned you've been asking questions about our investment opportunities." Just curious about where our money went. Our money? Barrett's eyebrows rose. I think you mean Lauren's money. The funds she invested came from her personal account. Her personal account that I've been contributing to for 10 years. Trent leaned forward, playing the role of reasonable mediator. I'm sure there's just some confusion about the paperwork. These family investment vehicles can be complicated. Not that complicated, I said. Money goes in, returns come out. Or they don't. Barrett's face was starting to redden. Are you suggesting that we're not handling Lauren's investment properly? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking direct questions and getting vague answers. Maybe the problem is that you don't understand the complexities of high-level financial planning, Trent said. These aren't the kind of simple, straightforward transactions you're used to in your line of work. There it was again, the subtle implication that my job, my life, my entire existence was somehow lesser than theirs. You're right, I said. I'm used to things that actually work. When we design a wing, it either provides lift or it doesn't. When we build an engine, it either produces thrust or it fails. There's no room for creative accounting or elaborate explanations. Results are results. Business is more nuanced than engineering, Barrett said. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you took my wife's money and either lost it or spent it on something you don't want to talk about. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Barrett and Trent exchanged glances, and I could practically see them recalibrating their approach. Ethan, Barrett said finally, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The investment is performing exactly as expected. These things take time to mature. How much time? It's hard to say. Market conditions, regulatory factors, timing. Ballpark. Another exchange of glances. 18 months, maybe 2 years. And in the meantime, the money is tied up. That's how investments work, Trent said. You have to be patient. Patient. Like I'd been patient about Lauren's late nights and mysterious phone calls and sudden interest in family business. Like I'd been patient about being treated like an outsider at my own wife's family gatherings. I'm sure you understand, Barrett continued, that this is really between Lauren and us. Family business. Family business. The magic phrase that excluded me from everything that mattered. Right, I said, finishing my brandy. Family business. I stood up to leave, but Trent's voice stopped me. Ethan, I hope there are no hard feelings about any of this. We're all on the same team here. I turned back to look at him, this smooth-talking snake who was sleeping with my wife and patronizing me in the same breath. Are we? I asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like some team members are more equal than others. I left them in the study and went to find Lauren. She was in the kitchen with her mother and Susan, discussing the Morrison wedding with the kind of animated enthusiasm usually reserved for natural disasters or celebrity scandals. Ready to go? I asked. Lauren looked surprised. Already. We usually stay for lunch. I have some things to take care of at home. What things? Personal business. The drive home was quiet, Lauren staring out the window while I navigated the Sunday traffic. Finally, she spoke. You were rude to Trent. Was I? You know you were. He was trying to be friendly, and you were confrontational. Maybe I don't like being condescended to. He wasn't condescending. He was making conversation. Right. Just like Barrett was making conversation when he explained how simple my job is. Just like your mother was making conversation when she asked if I was still tinkering with airplanes. Lauren sighed, the sound of someone dealing with an unreasonable child. They don't mean anything by it, Ethan. That's just how they talk. And how do I talk? What do you mean? How do I talk about them when they're not around? Lauren was quiet for a long moment. You don't, she said finally. Exactly. I don't talk about them at all. Because I was raised to believe that if you can't say something nice about someone, you shouldn't say anything at all. So what's your point? My point is that maybe it's time I started talking. We pulled into our driveway, and Lauren turned to face me with the kind of expression that suggested she was finally taking this conversation seriously. What's that supposed to mean? I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, looking at our house. Her house, really, bought with her family's money and decorated according to her family's taste. It means I'm tired of being the outsider in my own marriage, I said finally. You're not an outsider. Aren't I? When was the last time you asked my opinion about something important? When was the last time you chose me over them? Lauren's face went through several expressions before settling on defensive anger. That's not fair. You knew what you were getting into when you married me. You knew family was important to me. Important, yes. More important than your husband? That's news to me. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I'm the only one in this marriage who doesn't get to have an opinion about how we spend our money, where we invest our future, or who gets to make decisions about our lives. Lauren got out of the car and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I sat there for a moment longer, watching her storm toward the house, and realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Monday morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a personal day without asking Lauren's permission first. I called into work, told them I needed to handle some family business, the irony wasn't lost on me, and spent the morning at a coffee shop downtown, watching people hurry past the windows while I planned my next moves. The voice recorder I'd bought was smaller than a pack of gum and could capture 8 hours of conversation. I'd tested it over the weekend, and the quality was surprisingly good. Clear enough to pick up whispered conversations, detailed enough to capture the nuances of tone and inflection that could make the difference between innocent and damning. At 11:30, I drove to the Grandview Hotel. Lauren had mentioned that Mondays were her planning days, when she met with vendors and coordinated with other departments about upcoming events. She usually worked through lunch, grabbing a salad from the hotel restaurant and eating at her desk while she reviewed contracts and timelines. But today was different. Today, I watched from the parking garage as Lauren walked out of the hotel at exactly noon, wearing the black dress that made her look like a magazine cover and the smile she used to reserve for me. Trent was waiting for her in his red Corvette, engine running, looking like every middle-aged man's fantasy of himself. He got out to open her door. Such a gentleman, and I saw him kiss her cheek before she got in. They drove north toward the lake, and I followed at a distance that would have made a private investigator proud. The voice recorder was in my shirt pocket, and my phone was set to record video. I felt like I was preparing for war, which I supposed I was. The Lakehouse sat on a private road surrounded by tall pines and the kind of natural beauty that real estate agents called priceless. It belonged to the Henderson Family Trust, which meant it technically belonged to everyone and no one, a perfect place for secret meetings and private conversations. I parked down the road and walked through the trees until I could see the house clearly. Trent's Corvette was in the driveway next to a silver Mercedes I recognized as Barrett's. Through the large windows, I could see figures moving around inside. The voice recorder picked up everything. "Told you this was risky," Barrett was saying. "If Ethan starts asking the right questions—" "Ethan doesn't ask questions," Lauren replied. "He just accepts whatever I tell him. He always has." "People change," Trent said. "And he seemed different yesterday. More aware." "Aware of what?" Lauren laughed, but it sounded forced. "He's an engineer. He thinks in straight lines and simple solutions. He doesn't understand complexity." "Maybe that's the problem," Barrett said. "Simple solutions to complex problems can be dangerous." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we need to be more careful. The money transfer was supposed to be temporary, just until the Morrison deal closed. But if Ethan starts demanding documentation—" "He won't," Lauren said firmly. "I know my husband. He's predictable." Predictable. The word hit me like a physical blow. 10 years of marriage, and that's how she saw me. Predictable. "Still," Trent said, "maybe it's time to consider alternatives." "What kind of alternatives?" "The kind that protect everyone's interests. Long term." There was a pause, and I could hear movement inside the house. Then Lauren's voice, quieter now, more intimate. "Are you talking about divorce?" "I'm talking about whatever it takes to secure our future," Trent replied. "Yours and mine." "And Barrett's," Barrett added. "Don't forget, this affects all of us." "How much time do we have?" Lauren asked. "Depends on how suspicious he gets," Trent said. "But I'd say we have maybe a month before we need to make some hard decisions." A month. They were giving me a month before they destroyed my life completely. I stayed in the trees for another hour, listening to them plan my downfall with the casual efficiency of people discussing a business merger. They talked about asset protection and legal strategies and something called irreconcilable differences, like they were reading from a script. When they finally left, Lauren in her car, Trent in his, Barrett in his Mercedes, I waited until I was sure they were gone, then walked back to my car on legs that felt like rubber. The drive home was a blur of anger and adrenaline and something that felt like relief. Finally, I knew where I stood. Finally, I understood the game they'd been playing while I sat on the sidelines like a spectator at my own life. Lauren got home at her usual time, carrying takeout from the Thai place we both liked, and wearing the expression of someone who'd had a perfectly normal day at work. "How was your day?" she asked, kissing my cheek like she had 1,000 times before. "Productive," I said. "Yours?" "Busy. The Morrison wedding is turning into a real challenge. So many moving parts, so many people involved." "I bet. Family business can be complicated. She gave me a sharp look, but I kept my expression neutral. What did you do on your day off? Just some personal projects, nothing exciting. We ate dinner while Lauren told me about difficult vendors and demanding clients and all the challenges of coordinating a major event. She was animated, enthusiastic, completely convincing. If I hadn't heard her planning my destruction a few hours earlier, I might have believed every word. By the way, she said as we were cleaning up, I might need to work late a few nights this week. The Morrison timeline is really tight. Of course, I said. Whatever you need to do. She smiled, probably thinking she'd gotten away with something. You're so understanding, Ethan. I'm lucky to have such a supportive husband. Supportive, understanding, predictable. That night, after Lauren went to sleep, I sat in my home office and made a list. Not a to-do list this time, but inventory of everything I knew, everything I could prove, and everything I needed to find out. What I knew, Lauren was having an affair with Trent Morrison. She'd moved our money to Barrett's investment scheme without my knowledge or consent. The three of them were planning to divorce me and somehow protect their assets in the process. What I could prove, the financial transfers were documented. The voice recording was clear and detailed. I had dates, times, and locations of their meetings. What I needed to find out, how much money was really involved, what Barrett's investment actually was, and how they planned to execute their strategy. I also made another list, people I could trust. It was a short list. Nina from work. My old friend Manny, who tended bar at a place downtown and had a talent for gathering information. Maybe Susan, Barrett's wife, who seemed as fed up with the Henderson family dynamics as I was, but mostly I was on my own. Which was fine by me. I'd been on my own for months without realizing it. Tuesday morning, Lauren left for work with a spring in her step and a smile that probably had more to do with Trent than with any wedding planning. I waited until her car was out of sight, then called Nina. "Ward," she answered on the first ring. "Please tell me you're coming in today. Jenkins is starting to ask questions about your sudden interest in personal time." "I'll be in this afternoon," I said. "But I need a favor first." "Shoot." "You know people in the hotel industry, right? From your ex-husband's restaurant days?" Nina's ex had owned a high-end restaurant that catered to the same clientele as places like the Grandview Hotel. The marriage had ended badly, but Nina had maintained some connections in that world. A few. Why? "I need information about the Grandview Hotel, specifically about their events department and a guy named Trent Morrison." There was a pause. "This is about Lauren, isn't it?" "Yeah." "What kind of information?" "The kind that might be useful in a divorce." Another pause, longer this time. "Jesus, Ethan, I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, just help me if you can." "Give me a few hours. I'll make some calls." Nina called back at 2:00, just as I was getting ready to head into work. "Your instincts were right," she said without preamble. "Trent Morrison is bad news. He's got a reputation for mixing business with pleasure, if you know what I mean. There are rumors about at least 3 affairs with married clients over the past 2 years. "What kind of rumors?" "The kind that end marriages and business relationships. He's smooth, he's charming, and he's completely without scruples. Word is, he specifically targets women with money and influence. Like Lauren. Like Lauren. There's something else, though. The Morrison wedding that Lauren's been working on. Trent Morrison isn't the groom. He's the groom's business partner. The actual wedding is for some tech millionaire who's marrying his college sweetheart." That stopped me cold. So Trent isn't getting married. Not according to my sources, which makes you wonder why he's so involved in the planning, doesn't it? It certainly did. It also explained why Lauren had been so excited about the Morrison wedding, so invested in making it perfect. She wasn't just planning an event, she was planning her future. "There's one more thing," Nina said. "My contact at the Grandview mentioned that there have been some questions about irregularities in the events department. Nothing official yet, but apparently some money has gone missing from client deposits." "How much money?" "Enough to get someone fired or arrested." After Nina hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, thinking about missing money and irregular deposits and Lauren's sudden interest in family investments. The pieces were starting to fit together, and the picture they formed made my stomach turn. Lauren wasn't just cheating on me, she was stealing, and Barrett and Trent weren't just helping her hide an affair, they were helping her hide a crime, which meant I had more leverage than I'd thought, but it also meant the stakes were higher than I'd imagined. That evening, I watched Lauren get ready for another late night at work, with the kind of clinical detachment usually reserved for scientific observation. She chose her outfit carefully, the blue dress that showed just enough cleavage to be interesting without being obvious. She spent extra time on her makeup, adding the kind of subtle touches that most people wouldn't notice, but that made all the difference. "Don't wait up," she said, kissing me goodbye. "This could take a while." "I'm sure it will," I replied. After she left, I poured myself a glass of the expensive whiskey Barrett had given me for Christmas. Might as well drink his money, and called Manny. "Ethan Ward," he answered, because Manny had never met a situation that couldn't be improved with profanity. "How the hell are you, man?" "Been better. You busy tonight?" "Never too busy for you. What's up?" "I need to have a conversation with someone, and I need a witness. Someone who knows how to keep his mouth shut and his ears open." "Sounds like my kind of party. Where and when?" "My place. Give me an hour." Manny arrived with a bottle of bourbon and the kind of grin that suggested he was looking forward to whatever chaos I had planned. He was built like a bouncer and had the street smarts of someone who'd grown up in neighborhoods where survival required paying attention to details. "So," he said, settling into my couch like he owned it, "what's the story? And don't tell me this is about Lauren, because I can see it in your face." I told him everything. The affair, the money, the family conspiracy, the voice recording from the Lakehouse. Manny listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making the kind of non-committal sounds that meant he was processing information. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Damn, brother," he said finally. "That's some cold-blooded shit." "Yeah. So what's the plan?" "I'm working on it." Manny grinned, and I remembered why we'd been friends since high school. "Working on it, my ass. You've got something in mind, or you wouldn't have called me. Spill it." He was right, of course. I did have something in mind. Something that would give Barrett and Trent and Lauren exactly what they deserved, served up with a kind of poetic justice that would make them remember this lesson for the rest of their lives. "How do you feel about crashing a wedding?" I asked.